Mark Zuckerberg wants in on the billionaire Trump squad. The Meta CEO, who dined with President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago last week, wants to help shape tech policy within the incoming administration. That's according to a Financial Times report. Meta's president of global affairs, Sir Nick Clegg, told reporters that Zuckerberg wants an active role in the debates that any administration needs to have about maintaining America's leadership in the technological sphere. He added that leadership will be important amid global geostrategic uncertainties and the advent of AI.
In a shocker, Clegg admitted Meta was, quote, too heavy-handed in its approach to content moderation. Now, if you recall, earlier this year, Zuckerberg himself fessed up in a letter to Congress that the platform caved under pressure from the Biden administration to censor Americans. This comes as Facebook and Instagram's parent company, Meta, said Tuesday that it takes down harmless content by mistake too often, which Clegg said, quote, gets in the way of free expression that we set out to enable. He added that too many people get penalized unfairly, and Meta pledged to improve their policy rollouts going forward. Many on the right see this as a renewed victory for free speech.
But others are also angry about a possible Zuckerberg role in the Trump administration. Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on X, so Mark Zuckerberg and Meta are trying to be nice to President Trump in order to play an active role in Trump's upcoming tech policies. Let's test how nice Zuckerberg and Meta will be to us lowly MAGA folks by posting our free speech opinions on Facebook and Instagram. That is, if you weren't already banned by both platforms during COVID. And co-host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, Chris Rossini, wrote, "Oh, really? Who else? Does Bill Gates want national renewal too?" Yeah, look, I think I disagree with these guys, with the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Ron Paul guy a little bit here. I understand why they dislike Mark Zuckerberg so intensely for the COVID era moderation policies, which were very, very bad, and I have ongoing frustrations with Facebook over some of its fact-checking, which, unlike Twitter X, fact-checking there is done by that community notes feature, which is awesome. Facebook still uses third-party fact-checking organizations to police content, and these organizations are just left-wing activist groups that are terrible. I've complained about this many times. So there are still ongoing problems, but what I would say to Marjorie Taylor Greene on this is like, okay, he admits you were right. They've changed a lot of the moderation policies. They don't want to make Trump people mad anymore. They want to make Trump people happy. At some point, take the win. Like, they want to come into the fold. They're changing the way they're doing business. It's like Tywin Lannister says in Game of Thrones, when your enemies defy them, you must meet them with steel and fire. But when they submit, you have to welcome them graciously, or else no one will ever surrender. Or else you have to fight every battle to the last man.
Good Game of Thrones reference.
Yeah.
Well, I would say first, Meta and Zuckerberg made a lot of mistakes, especially during COVID. Basically, narratives that were not part of elite Democratic narratives around the COVID pandemic, they labeled as misinformation. A lot of that was inappropriate. And Zuckerberg has said he made a mistake on that and on the Joe Rogan podcast and other platforms. So they've made mistakes. What's going on with him and Trump? I would say at best, he wants to offer some insight. At worst, he is asking what's the price to get into your good graces. And it could be anywhere on that spectrum. But for Democrats who are worried about the rise of these billionaire oligarchs who are joining the Trump camp and influencing our politics, look, there's nothing new about that. That happens on the Republican and the Democratic side. The core reason why that happens is because money has such an influence in our campaign. The reason why Elon is basically Trump's right-hand guy right now is because he spent millions and millions and millions of dollars helping Trump get elected. That happens on the Democratic side. That's why they have the Lincoln bedroom, apparently, is to offer that up to their billionaire donors. And so if you want to, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you want to address the root issue of why billionaires are even able to have access like that, you have to address why we have the big money in politics, and you have to root that out.
Yeah, it's tough, though. Look, I don't want big business and politicians getting together can have a lot of bad effects. I agree with that, especially because I often fear that the big guys, the big players, sometimes they come out in favor of more regulation because they know regulations, industry-specific regulations, will end up hurting upstart competitors more than it will hurt the big guys, or the regulations will be structured in some ways to hurt the little guys more than the big guys. This has been an issue with tech regulation, and in fact, Meta and Zuckerberg came out in favor of changes to Section 230, the statute that has a lot to do with internet liability. They came out with, and this was years ago, with support for more regulation that Twitter, and this was before Elon was involved, Twitter opposed. And the reason was, if you looked very closely, this would have imposed massive new constraints on the companies. Twitter, at the time, and still is, a much smaller company that could afford to have fewer moderators, that didn't have enough money to hire more moderators. Under this regulation, it would have hurt them much worse than it would have hurt Meta. So even though you might go, well, regulation, industry's against that. No, the bigger guy was for it because it's going to hurt their rival more. And that's mostly what I worry about when big business becomes involved with government. Now, I agree with Zuckerberg, though, that America should remain the most important and supportive of a country for technological innovation. There's a reason that the United States is the hub, Silicon Valley is the hub of growth in this all-important, critically important for the survival of our species sector, and Europe lags behind and other parts of the world lag behind, and that is because they don't have favorable environments for internet and for speech and for innovation, because they're too regulated and they have too many bureaucrats running everything. So it is, in my view, critically important to stop that from happening in the United States, and I certainly know many people, many Democrats and Republicans, both sides of the aisle, they want to add more like age verification stuff. They want to break up companies that they don't like. They want to expand liability. They want to make it harder for the tech sector to grow and to innovate, and I think that would be very bad for our country. We've seen the effects of it elsewhere. In fact, we've seen how concerns that sound legitimate, like, well, we got to protect our children from bad stuff on the internet. Who could be against that? That sounds good. And then what that other countries use that power to actually police the internet of dissident speech. And I'm very worried about that happening here.
Well, one major issue that Mark Zuckerberg and other social media leaders can hopefully advise the president on is how to address social media algorithms. And that's one area I would be worried about if Facebook is against that regulation. You mentioned Section 230, which is one part of this issue. But for everyone who's wondering, how do we deal with the misinformation online while protecting free speech? I think the key balance there is to address that we as users should be able to express ourselves freely, but the social media companies and their I think, corrupted algorithms do need to be regulated by the federal government. The algorithms that...
Can you say more about that? What do you mean by corrupted algorithms?
Well, so the algorithms that make outrage the dominant form of communication right now, there is an uneven playing field for people who are just trying to get good information out there versus people who are weaponizing the algorithms and by extension weaponizing human emotion to get misinformation out there. And you see this on all the social media platforms. I would hope that the more enlightened social media companies would be in favor of that and might even take some pressure off of the content moderation side of it.
I think I got to disagree with you there. First, on the outrage meter effect, there's just nothing new about that with social media, right? If it bleeds, it leads has been the law in the media for all time. All media companies, all platforms, TV, radio, print, and everything in between have weaponized outrage. But if by weaponized, I mean try to outrage you about, in some cases, things that are legitimately outrageous. I mean, I think the things we talk about on their show, I'm outraged about them because I want people to know about them because I think that you should be outraged. In terms of the algorithm rewarding that, I mean, if that's what people want, that's what people want to hear about, interesting, provocative, contrarian stories, the algorithm is going to reward that because that's what human beings want to hear. It's not hypnotizing you. It's not holding your eyeballs open and making you stare at something you don't want to read.
It basically is though.
No, it's not. You can just turn it off. Put it away. Put the phone over there. No more outrage.
It's the
You
equivalent-
want the
say that-
information. You want it.
Say that to someone who's addicted to cigarettes or who's addicted to crack cocaine, right? Like
It's not
these
addictive
are-
in the same way.
These are addictive and predatory algorithms.
I don't agree with
I
that.
encourage people to watch The Social Dilemma, the
Oh, that
documentary,
was
which goes into
terrible. I watched. That was the most. Talk about exploitation and performative outrage. That film does that. That film does that exact. The whole thing is trying to shock and scare you into thinking, yes, that your smartphone is the same as crack cocaine or cigarettes. Tobacco has killed thousands, millions. I don't know how many people over the period of time. How many people have been killed by Instagram? Like
if you
a
look at the
handful,
data
maybe.
on rising suicide rates among teen girls on Instagram.
If we
those numbers
attribute
are alarming.
that only to Instagram, which would be totally unfair, but if you still did that, you would talking about deaths in the tens, not millions of people, or
No,
however many were killed by tobacco.
Well,
I think it's totally emotionally exploitative to put these things together. You're not the only one to do this. Yes, I know that film absolutely did that. And it's to me, that's anti-speech propaganda. That's from people who assert the power to decide what you are going to read and consume and how much of it they think is healthy for you to spend consuming the news. Excuse me, this is America. Someone else is not going to make that decision for me or for my family or for my children. We are going to make that.
This is very simple. On X, you have two feeds, right? You have For You, and then you just have just the flow of latest tweets.
Yeah.
Look at the difference between those two. The For You is one thing, and then if you just have the chronological order of tweets, that essentially
Well, even that
is
one's
more,
it's not purely chronological.
It's not purely chronological.
You can
It's
switch to
more-
pure chronological. You won't like it, I promise.
It's more neutral in terms of the algorithm, and you can just, for the viewers at home, just look at the difference. And I agree, it is less satisfying to be on the more neutral algorithm because it's less shooting up your emotions. But there is a difference. You have to agree there's a difference.
Well, but the curated one, yes, the curated one has learned something about me and knows whose tweets I would really not like to miss. I really like Nate Silver, the pollster. We talk about him a lot. The algorithm knows it's very important for me to see all of his tweets. I want to see them. We're going to talk about them. I want that analysis. So instead of just a chronological feed where I end up seeing a lot of things that are not as interesting to me, even though there happen to be from people I follow, the algorithm knows these are the musts for Robby. And it's not perfect, but it's getting better all the time. And I see that as a good thing. It's amazing to people. People can read that. We're inventing a way to give you more precise information about your interests, and some people are deciding that's a bad thing.
For everyone at home, when do you feel more exhausted? When do you feel more upset with life? Where do you there's an exhausted majority of people out there who are looking to just tone things down a little bit.
That's fine. Do it. Turn off. Log off. Do that periodically. I agree. It's healthy. I agree.
There's our point of agreement right there.
Well, that's fine. But I just think that choice should be on individuals and families and communities to make, not on federal bureaucrats.
Yeah,
that would be my point of disagreement.
Choose the thing that makes you feel better. Take a social media break. We should debate this more.
That's fine. Breaks from social media, absolutely healthy. I don't look at my phone past 10 o'clock or whatever. You gotta, put on a Harry Potter movie and go to bed. More Rising coming up right after this. Stay with us.